I walked in on my son in bed with his boyfriend.
I have a son aged 19 who finished high school last year. He decided to take a gap year, so I allowed him to since he was not sure what he wanted to do with his life. I also live with my husband, Carl, who is a pilot. I work as a teacher at a local middle school. My son Jason is a bit of a wild child. We could never tame him. It is a wonder that he even finished high school. He had said that he was taking a gap year to focus on his band, but I knew it was going nowhere. I knew that I sound very unsupportive, but that kid has zero work ethic. When my husband told me that we were going to a fancy resort for Valentine's weekend, I was conflicted. I knew that if I left Jason alone at home, I would be lucky to see the house intact. But Carl had begged me, telling me how we had not spent time together in so many months. I eventually gave in and said yes. When I told my son, he acted innocent of course. Kids think that we as parents do not see through their tricks. He acted calm as if he was going to be chilled all weekend. I just hoped that if he was going to have a party, then the neighbors would not call me to complain about the noise. I gave him some money for essentials, and we were off. Being a parent is a full-time job. Any break from it is the best thing ever. I was so happy that I could get to spend some quality time with my husband. It had been so long, so we drove to the resort that was 2 hours away. We listened to some music and chatted about small things. Our conversation was so boring, just work, our kid, and trivial things. Nonetheless, I laid back and let him drive as I relaxed next to him. We arrived at the resort a few hours later. It was a beautiful place, very private and exclusive. The perks of having a husband who was a pilot. A coworker had given them to him because he had an unexpected flight. We had packed our stuff and the hosts brought us some wine to drink while we chilled. I would not go into too much detail about what happened at the resort as that is irrelevant. But yes, we had a good time. I was also relieved that I had not gotten any calls of complaint from the neighbors. If I had, I was going to skin that kid alive. We went home a little earlier than usual. I had a conference for work to attend later that afternoon. We pulled up at home and I opened the door for us while Carl unpacked the bags for us. To my surprise, the house looked very clean. I was suspicious. Had that little rascal gone to a sleepover? I was so glad. I had been worried about my white sofas. If anything had been slipped on them, there would have been hell to pay. I made my way upstairs to check if Jason was home. I was praying that he was home. Even though he annoyed the life out of me, I could not go a day without seeing my baby. I reached his door and opened. I figured that he must have been sleeping. Nothing prepared for me for what I saw next. I only saw it for a second, but I slammed the door as soon as I saw what was going on in that room. It was my son, kissing his so-called bandmate and fried Chris. I had not expected that of all things. I walked back downstairs still in shock. I started piecing together how those two were inseparable. I figured that it was just a close friendship. It turns out that they were closer than that. I found my husband carrying in the last of our bags. Most of those bags were mine. I could not live without several outfit changes in a day. And then, "Why do you look like you have seen a ghost?" he asked. I might as well have. No, I'm not sure if that was what I saw. It must have been a trick of the light, I said, making my way over to the couch. I plopped down and he sat next to me. Did he have friends over again? Did they make a mess upstairs? He asked. No, he has a friend over though, I said. What's the problem then? He asked. Let me call him so that he can explain. I'm at loss for words, I said. I called his name and he came down the stairs alone. And your friend? I asked. He stood there for a while, flushed. He looked everywhere but at the two of us. Chris? He said. Chris appeared behind him. He looked disheveled and was matching my son's red tone. I figured that their hearts were beating very fast because they were clearly caught. Well then, take a seat, my husband said. I saw my son gulp and take a seat next to me. Chris took a seat next to him. I can explain, he said. Do so, I said. I was not upset that I had caught him with a guy. I was upset because of the lack of transparency. It did not matter to me who my son dated or was with. I just wanted him to be happy. I had just hoped that we could have avoided the awkward situation where I had walked in on them. Chris and I are dating, he said. Okay, Carl said. What? Jason asked in a shocked tone. I nearly laughed at him. He probably thought that he was going to make a big deal over the whole situation. But why would we? As long as our son was safe, we were good. We're okay with it. And please, close your mouth before you swallow a fly. I do wish that you had told us earlier though, I said. Sorry, Mom and Dad. I was not sure what your reaction would be. Not every parent is okay with their child being gay. He looked down. Yeah, I cannot believe that your parents are so chilled with the whole thing. You should have seen mine. My dad went so red that I thought he would explode. Chris chuckled. All of us laughed along with him. But yes, on a more serious note, we would like it if you were a bit more transparent with us. Chris seems like a lovely boy. It would be lovely if he joined us for dinner sometime, Carl said. I second that, I grinned. A few weeks later, Chris came over for dinner. The two had been dating for a while. In the beginning, they were a bit shy around us. I understood. Parents can be frightening, but over time they loosened up and they started to become more comfortable around the house. During dinner, we got to know Chris a bit more. He was such a nice young man. During dinner, they also dropped a bomb that I had not expected. So, we have something to tell you, Jason said. Sure, what is it? I asked. Chris and I are going to live in England for a while, he said. Oh, I said. I was a bit shocked. My relationship with my son was getting better. He had explained to us that he had rebelled due to the internal conflict he felt over his sexuality. I was hoping that he would stay for a bit longer in our house. I do not want to lie. It is hard to let go of your child as a parent, especially when they are moving to a place that is very far from your own home. It was going to be so hard to adjust. Yes, I got a scholarship to a music college there, and Chris was already going to go there. So we figured that we would go, he said. But there are schools here, I protested. Yes, Mom, but I also need to develop as a person, outside of the environment that I grew up in. I also want to pursue my dreams, he said. I stood up and went to give him a hug. I could not believe how grown up my son was. One thing I would want parents to do is to pay attention to their kids' needs. Not every child is rebellious because they are trying to be difficult. There could be other reasons beyond what is on the surface. In this 21st century, kids should not be afraid to come out. Coming out transformed my son's life for the better. He is now going to pursue his dreams of being a musician. I was very happy for him. The end. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force. And stay wholesome.